Welcome to another scalable OpenShift scalable multiplayer game design. Jeez, we do these so infrequently. I don't even know what the name of the show is. I'm Erik Jacobs. If you remember me, if you've ever seen any of these before, joining me today is Roderick Kieley, as usual, our one faithful participant, as other folks have abandoned us or abandoned Red Hat or
Come
done
and
other
gone.
things.
Maybe to be back again. You don't know.
And for those of you who have been OpenShift TV watchers for a long time, you might remember the turkey hat. That I don't know if anybody.
I've
Roddy,
not
if
seen
you've
the
ever
turkey
seen the
hat.
turkey
This is
hat.
new.
Yeah, I'll wear it for like 2 minutes because it's gonna get really warm.
Very appropriate, however.
And then I've got my Let It Snow, Jon Snow sweatshirt here for the winter theme. I noticed that the stream we did last time had the winter theme in the background, but it was like September or whatever it was when we did the last one. So I'm not really sure why.
We were looking forward.
Why? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, we've got this OpenShifty one, but that's not that OpenShift is boring, but anyway.
Far from it.
So, for those who have never seen this stream before, we have been working on this game. Let's see, GitHub.com, Red Hat Game Dev. Isn't there like a game design? There is somewhere. Here we go. Multiplayer game design. I'll put this in the chat for y'all. So, what? Discord? Oh, apparently this is connected to Discord somehow. Yeah, so we've got this like little space shootery game, uses AMQP messaging, and there's a message broker, and we've got a game server and a game client, both written in Godot and all that kind of fun stuff. And so on the last episode, we had gone a little bit into the protobuf message structure. Oh, and I just realized that I'll have to find that Google Doc. I think I shared it with myself, but we'll see. And so since that last episode, I've done a fair bit of coding. So actually did a complete overhaul of the protobuf message structure that's used for the client and the server to communicate. A lot of that was a sort of legacy code. There was like some nested levels of stuff. And so we simplified that dramatically, updated the server and the client to use it. And so I'm not going to go into that code, but we'll go into some of the structure here in a little bit. Then another thing we did was, Roddy and I had played the game a little bit, and it was cool, but it was like you had no idea where the other players were or where to go or anything like that. So SRT message structure. Cool.
And so when we realized that, then Erik realized we needed a radar, a standard gaming thing. And so between himself and one of the artists here, Kelly Gray, they put together a radar, both in visual and in function. And now you can actually see little white dots on a radar. And as you fly toward them, they get closer to you, closer to the center, which enables you to find some players to go actually have some gameplay, which we can do now, right? Like when we ran the client and server up to test out the radar stuff, we were able to go up and shoot at each other. And I think one ship destroyed another, which is, a very minimum amount of gameplay that we're aiming to see. And so the way the clients, as you join in, you can join multiple clients and they get placed randomly and you can see them, little blips appear on the radar. And basically we're almost ready, I think, to look at some scale out stuff.
Maybe, yeah. Try to scale
sometime
it.
In the future, near future.
So I am gonna skip the current state because that's not important, and then we're gonna go to the future, which is actually the present.
Yes.
So doing some time travel today here. Okay, so we have this concept of security messages. Sorry, so conceptually there's only two, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously even, there's only two types of messages. There's stuff that comes from the clients and then the stuff that we send to the clients. And so from the perspective of stuff that comes from the clients, there's only two types of messages. Now, there's these security related messages. So, hi, I'm here. Tell me about what's going on. Or, hey, I'm joining the game and want to play now. Or like, hey, I quit the game. Peace out, table flip, whatever. And then commands from the client, right? Like the player has pressed buttons or done something. from the server's perspective, there's only two things. There's two types of messages that we send to the clients, and so these are also security type messages. And so one of them is this: here's all the information you need to know about the default settings for the game, like, hey, what is the number of hit points you start with, and what's the speed of the missiles when you first start, and so on and so forth. Or just like other players joined, other players left, et cetera, so that the client knows a little bit about what to do. And then, not surprisingly, we have game events, which are, updates or creation of player objects, or like missiles appear, disappear, their position changes, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much it for the new message structure. It's a whole lot simpler. We used to have like a bunch of nesting and all this other stuff, which existed for some legacy reasons that we won't go into, and or that we don't even fully remember in some cases. And so this just seemed like a little simpler. The other thing I added, as kind of I added in advance of actually using it or needing it, is this auth token field. And so at some point, we're going to need to ensure that the client or the server that sent the message is actually authorized to do so. And so there's actually a really interesting podcast called Darknet Diaries, for those of you who are podcast listeners. And Darknet Diaries talks about all this interesting tech, internet, networky, cyber security type stuff. And they interviewed a person who, his job was essentially like MMO hacker. And so he would look at like the messages that the clients would send to the servers, and then try to hack the protocols and like send goofy messages to create objects or destroy things or whatever, give himself money or power ups and so on and so forth. But anyway, so it's important for, in the context of a multiplayer game, for the client and the server to uh, be who they say they are, and to be allowed to do what they want, what they are trying to do. And so what you wouldn't want is, say, since you can't just fire missiles indiscriminately, there's a timer. You wouldn't want somebody to fire the missile for another player that they are not that player, because that would be, it's one form of cheating in a way. So anyway, so someday we'll figure out how to use this auth token. Red Hat has some single sign-on and scalable directory services type solutions that can do JWTs. And so maybe we're considering how we might use JWTs to authenticate clients and servers and all that fun stuff. So anyway, that is the message structure stuff. And so just as a refresher, I'll just show one example of something in the server. I probably need to make my text bigger. We'll connect to Godot later. I don't need this one for now. So there's a debug mode in the game server that allows it to take input. So, if they press a button and there's some input, then we process the fact that there was input. If we go to that thing, we look at what the input was and we check some stuff or whatever, and then we send a command. We construct the protobuf message here, fill out some of its fields, and then we send that protobuf message. We use AMQP and the AMQP NetLight C# repository. So we serialize some binary data and then send it out to the actual message brokery doodad and all that fun stuff. So one of the things that's out there is a tool called ProtoGen, and we're using some Git submodule stuff that basically pulls in the conversion of protobuf language, DSL syntax, that gets converted to C# stuff, so that you have methods and functions to construct and access fields and all that other stuff. So anyway, not super interesting or fun or whatever, but we did a major overhaul and moved all that stuff around, and now we simplified it down to these three little files. So the thing that is interesting from a gamey perspective is the radar. So let's do this. I will open the Godot editor. And then I will open the GUI in the Godot editor. Checking the chat. Nobody's chatting. That's cool. Okay, so here's our structure for the game client. Here's the GUI scene. And I've got a bunch of stuff hidden. I'm actually going to rehide the radar. So we've got the speedometer and the missile ready indicator. So if I move this over, so this is our game window. We show the player's speed down here. We show the status of their missile over here. Pretty rudimentary. This is a red or green light. There's this missile ready indicator. We use a texture rect, and in the code, we just swap out some stuff when the missile fires or not. So this already existed. I think we covered it in some previous streams. Actually, I think that's supposed to be shown. Yeah, and the speedometer was hidden. Okay. And so the reason that these are hidden is because when the game menu loads, we're actually loading the login screen as like a node on top of the main UI, and then we send it away or whatever. I think I don't remember the specifics. It's not super important. But anyway, so we hide the UI elements so that they're not showing until you're in the game, and then once you're in the game, we have some code to literally to just show them. So we've got the radar. And then we have the radar reticle. And so I found out an interesting thing, which was counterintuitive to me. The layering in Godot is from top to bottom in the sense that the thing that's at the bottom is drawn last, which actually makes it on top. So I did this at first and I was like, where's the reticle? Why isn't the reticle showing? It's because it was being drawn under things. So remember, people out there in internet land, if you want something on top of something else in Godot, it actually, in the tree, it goes on the bottom because it's drawn last. It's drawn in order. So we've got our radar, we've got our radar reticle. That's cool. How do we actually use them? So now we have to go look at some of the C# code here. This is Godot server. Sorry, I want the client, my bad. Godot client. That's still the wrong window. One of these days I will find you the right window. Okay, here we go. So let's minimize this and then minimize that. All right, Roddy, do you think that's a good text size?
Yeah, I think so. I can almost make it out in my mini window here for the actual back end of the streaming.
That's probably good. So let's go to the outline really quick, and we'll go to the process, which is, as you know, if you know anything about Godot, that happens every frame. So do all the stuff, look for player input if we're in the game. If we have a ship, update the game UI, does some stuff. And then we have this. Well, technically the radar update should probably be in the update game UI, but it's not. You can shoot me later. But what I did was I said, look, I don't want to like do crazy updates on the radar because it maybe this is kind of a pixely game. Like maybe it should sort of be pixely feeling. And so we actually only update the radar once every second. And so what we do is we have this refresh timer that's based on the delta. And so if you know in Godot, every time process runs, there's a delta which indicates how long it's been since the last time process ran. And so essentially we just sum up all the deltas until we get above the refresh time, and that fires the timer, if you will. We reset the timer back to 0. We send a log message, and then we run this update game radar method. Godot and C# both have like timers and stopwatches and other stuff. Like you can use them. This is lamer and easier than learning new stuff. So I just did this because we already had an example of doing this somewhere else. We just define this radar refresh time. Right now it's hard coded to 1, but that would be another thing where at some point the server will announce all that type of stuff to the client, and then the client will change its settings accordingly. Anyway, what do we do when we actually update the game radar? I don't know what I just clicked. That was wrong.
I think the 1 second turns out to be pretty good though. Like when you actually are moving the ship around, like it feels like a pretty good update rate.
Yep.
And like if you've ever if you've ever worked on radars, like I've worked on radars.
You've worked on like real life actual
Yeah,
like
real
radar
life
radar.
actual radars on planes where like there's a wait on wheels button, so you don't like, you don't want to step in front of the radar if like it's running, and it sweeps right, and it might sweep at a certain hertz, and so like it might sweep once per second, in which case you see the line go around, and then the blip updates and it moves, and the blip updates and it moves. So in actual fact, like this timer here actually simulates the real world actually more than like I
It's
completely
closer
simulate
to a
updated movement.
simulation of actual radar
Yeah, that's right.
because there's a time delay between updates. Now, the reality is that if we wanted to make it more realistic, we would have to actually simulate, okay, like this is the line
Right.
through which the
And the
radar
sweep,
is going.
and then
How
it would
big is the
fade.
beam for it to actually detect a thing? Is there anything in that beam that we are currently casting, if you will?
Yep.
If there is, then move it to where we see that it is now, and so on and so forth. But that was a lot of code that I wasn't willing to do. The other thing about the radar right now is it doesn't rotate with the ship. So up is just always up on the screen, regardless of which way the ship points, which is lame. It'd be nice if the radar like rotated to show you which direction, but again, that was going to require more code. This was
Yeah,
like
and I
first
think it
POC.
serves its purpose, right?
It serves the immediate need, which was
Yeah.
like, where the heck is anybody else in this
Right.
game? I don't
Exactly.
want to fly around in space forever and have no idea what's going on. So update game radar. So the first thing we do, which is probably super lame and terrible, but it's functional, is we just delete all of the child nodes of the radar, and then we add the blips in as children of the radar. So they will appear under the reticle because they're being there. If we go back to the, hold on. So if you go look at this thing over here, the node tree, we're adding them as children of radar, which means they will be under the reticle because if you remember, the things are drawn from top to bottom and the last one is on top. That was a terrible sentence. Anyway, so then we have this dictionary in C# of all the players that we know about. And so we iterate over each entry in that dictionary. And then that dictionary is actually a combination of strings, which are the players' IDs, and then actual Godot C# objects, which are the player ship entities, if you will. And so the first thing we do is set up some variables, and then we say, well, we don't want to draw ourselves on the radar. And just as an FYI, super important difference here. So originally I had return. And so this is like some C# basic fundamental knowledge that I'm not a coder, so I didn't have. So when you have return in a method, it doesn't return you from the loop; it returns you from the method. And
Yes.
so Roddy found a bug where you would join the game first. You were the first player that your client knew about, and then you would never see anything on the radar because what was happening is you were iterating over the player objects. You were the first player object, and you would return from the game update radar. So the radar just never got updated. Then I thought break was the correct word, and that turned out to also not be the correct word. So you actually want continue. So in C#, a continue statement inside of a loop will exit that iteration of the loop and then go to the next iteration. So what this continue statement is doing is basically if the entry, if the current player that we're iterating over has the same UUID as ourselves, as our game client, skip this loop because we don't want to draw our own dot on the radar. Okay, great. So now we've got into a real player. So I added some logs because, when you're trying to figure stuff out, logging is always helpful. The player that we're concerned about is at this position X and Y. Then I figured out, okay, how far away are they from us? And I said, okay, relative position. And then I did some scaling to the edge of the radar reticle. And I just made up a number. I said, all right, well, I joined a bunch of players to the game and I looked at the data that was coming out. And it was like, well, a player that was relatively far away was like 5,000 pixels or 5,000 units, whatever are going to call those units someday. They're unitless right now. They could be meters, they could be kilometers, it doesn't matter. And I said, all right, well, this number right now is 5,000. So 10,000 is probably really big and somewhat reasonable. And so then I did some scaling and I said, all right, let me scale how far they are away based on this 10,000 figure and then the actual number of screen pixels, which is the size of the reticle. And up here I have a comment that says the radar circle. So Godot radar. So this circle itself, that black area, is about 280 by 280. And in the actual image, if you look at this like PNG in an image editor, the center point of this image is roughly pixel 169 in the X and pixel 215 in the Y.
The center point of the circle.
The center point of the black circle is roughly at those coordinates. So I said, all right, let's scale the relative position of the player that we're looking at. And for whatever reason, X and Y are upside down. I'm sure I could figure out why, but in Godot, the way our game is working right now, X and Y are for some reason upside down. And so we take the scaled X and Y, we invert them, and then we offset them from the center position. So in this case, if the player in question, if we're in the center, if the player in question is to one direction, but that's a negative number, we're starting at the center and then moving over, right? So we're adding to the 169 and the 215, but if that's a negative number, it's going to subtract from it. Anyway, then we create a sprite object for the radar blip, which is just a 5 pixel by 5 pixel thing, and then we set its texture to this ship blip texture, which is a literal 5 pixel white square PNG. And then we move the blip to the X and Y position based on the calculations. And then we add that blip sprite as a child of the radar image, if you will. And so that will effectively draw the players wherever they are. So to see this code in action, all right, so first thing, I'm gonna nuke the data dir. So we use Artemis as the AMQP message broker. There are other brokers out there that speak AMQP, but Red Hat has productized around Artemis. RMRF data, oh, Grant, what are we building? We're building a game. This is, you're about to see what we're building. RMRF SRT data. So nuke the data folder and then run the message broker. The other day, the message broker said, hey, you're out of hard drive space. I'm not going to do any messaging. And I was like, oh, God, that's bad. And so I had to do some cleanup on my local disk. Okay, and then I'm going to run the server locally. And so, oops, that's bad. Connection refused. Why? Because this is the message broker running on the internet, not my local system. That'll do it. Okay. All right, so now I'm running the message broker locally on my system. There we go, much better. Chug, chug, chug. Okay, so now we're gonna run the game server locally on my laptop. So this is the debug UI for the game server. I can force join players, force delete players. I can look at players. And then I'm gonna run the game clients in debug mode. So hang on here, I'm gonna make this a little bigger. Debug console, F5 to build. Roddy, if you could paste the game design repo link again for Grant.
Okay.
So for those who may be watching this later, Grant is also a Red Hat person, so we're happy to have him taking a look at what we're doing. Okay, so this is building in the background. My computer is very angry, as always, because it's doing more than 2 things at once. Oh, that's bad. Some crazy null pointer errors. Okay, so I'll use my real call sign, Thorax. Join the game. So here we are. Here's my player. Here's my radar. And if I switch to the game server, what we see is that there's a player now that exists in the server. And so what I'm going to do is join some extra. Oh, and if we look at the client, there's nothing on the radar. So I'm going to join server 1. And if I switch back over here, we see this player, and you can only, I don't think you can see it, but there's like 1 pixel sticking out from under that triangle right now. And if I join another player, S2, there was a stream we did several months ago where we talk about how we use the Red Blob Games hexlib libraries for player placement and how we figured out how to distribute players in space. I will not revisit that. It was a very complex stream. It does exist. So I joined another player. If we zoom out, you can see that we've got the 2 first players are over here, and now this third player is way, way down over here. Yeah. If I switch back to the game client, now we see this blip on the radar, which I think is in the wrong place actually, based on where that player is. So as I move, you'll see the radar was supposed to move, but it's not. Is it moving? You know what? The UI is not updating either. Something is broken on the client.
So in this case, you've joined them all from the server, so maybe they need to be joined from the client.
No. When the client was building and started to run, there were like some weird null pointer errors that didn't make any sense. And so let's see what we got. Hold on, that's better. Client. Yeah, like this is some crazy. I don't know what any of that is. Added a ship to the scene tree. Can just insert tree, get transform. 2D canvas, index is out of bounds. Yeah, I had seen some stuff like this before. Make sure I'm using the right version of Godot, which shouldn't matter, but just for giggles. Don't save changes, help about 351 stable. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know why it's doing that. It didn't do that before. All right, try again, build. Okay, so here's the build. Let me clear this real quick. So this error is actually expected because it has to do with the protogen way that the C# gets generated. Those are non-fatal errors, but non-fatal expected errors, which is weird, but it is what it is. Okay, so switch to the debug console. So the game client loads some config, it connects to the server, everything's cool. We join the game. And we get crazy, horrible, nasty errors. Oh, you know what? This started happening, Roddy, when I changed this from return to continue.
Okay.
When the player was the first thing to join.
Yeah,
So let's see if we can troubleshoot. So adding ship to scene tree is in here. Add shot. Oh, you know what? I wonder. No, this isn't. It could be related to the call deferred and how long it takes for the child to actually end up there. Because here, what we do, right? So we add the child, we add the object of the instance of the ship, which shouldn't be a problem. This should be a thing because we're not depending on it to be added or existing. But then here's where we try to get the we make the camera current on the player, but the player may not exist in the scene yet because this call deferred takes time, doesn't it? Like, isn't this effectively async? I see you nodding. Is that a yes?
That is a yes. I didn't find my mute button in time.
Oh, you're good. So I think this explosion right here is potentially from the call deferred. So let's.
And that didn't resolve our problem. That was, debugging as suggested in the issue you'd raised, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just putting back the regular head child would be a good thing to do.
Some other nasty crash stuff. Yeah, so it's.
Although I don't know that I noticed those problems when I ran it up earlier today. I'll try it here locally.
Okay. Yeah, so there's another weird problem that we're having for the folks on the stream with a Bizarro error that it was suggested we use the deferred. Didn't actually fix the problem that we were having. And you, oh, the other question is, in the original code where you changed the, in some cases we were adding the child to something else.
Yeah,
were
the
you
root
sure?
node in some cases.
I'm sorry?
I can just go back and grab my my git diff from the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the changes to find what. I got to look at it in a different way. So you got it. Yeah, so that was on this. That's fine. That one was game radar call deferred. That's fine. This was just add child. And then this was just add child. And then this just add child. Okay, cool. Now remember, right? I started seeing that when I switched to continue instead of return, so that it could be related. But we'll nuke all the deferreds and then we'll try it again.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it here at the moment.
You're not seeing the error?
Nope.
Are you using the current code or the old code?
Current as of maybe a few hours ago.
You have the return. You have the return and not the continue.
No, I think I have the continue. Unless, had you checked that in?
I don't recall.
I'll take a look.
All right. Client.
No, indeed, I still have the return.
Yeah. Okay. So let's join the game.
So I can reproduce by changing it to continue.
And then come over here. So getting rid of the call deferred fixed it. So see, there's no error now. So I think at least in that case, the deferred is too slow. So we would have had to add another check to like make sure that the node was actually there.
Things were ready
before we move the camera. But anyway, so that should work at least for now. So okay, back to the client. So nobody here, C1. If we go to the debug server, we'll add S1, S2, and S3. And S2 and S3 should be close to one another. If we switch back to the client, they're still showing up in the wrong place based on the server because we're to the lower left. Maybe, and I could have sworn that negative thing was correct, but the UI is no longer updating correctly with the ship speed, which I think is weird. here's the player, S1. Radar is not updating either, so something weird is going on. Let's go back to our screen. Oh, look at that. Hey, there's our friend. And by friend, I mean our nemesis, nasty error. We've been trying to troubleshoot. Oh, and then of course it happened so fast that, or so much that we may have a short stream today.
Yeah, we may need to get a debug build up and running for Godot.
I have the debug build, so we could actually try and get even nastier with the debug build and try to actually use it. But
and so you've been able to set up
the radar used to work. I don't understand why the radar is now not, why all the UI stuff is suddenly not working, because I don't.
Yeah, when I tested it earlier today, it all worked okay up to, like I ran up to 6 clients and 1 joined from the server.
Okay, see now all of a sudden it's working. So it's only when the player is first that it doesn't seem to be working.
From the server,
as you can see, I'm moving up on the screen, and then suddenly I encounter some new players. So the radar is functional, the speedometer is functional, but I don't understand why, when the player is the first, that we get this horrible, nasty, interesting. Oh, I closed the game client. Yeah, so it was doing this nasty thing again already. Did it start? Oop, there's a cat. It started. Yeah, it's interesting. It started as soon as we joined. So we may actually be on the right track though, Roddy, because we changed back from add deferred on the player ship, and now all of a sudden I'm getting this as soon as the player joins.
Which is good from a reproducibility standpoint.
Well, maybe. I mean, we can try it again and see. This cat is going to try to get up in my lap because I'm normally at a standing desk and I'm sitting this time. So anyway, so let me try again, Roddy. Good point. So we've got some players on the server still. I'm going to get rid of the client 1. S1, S2, S3, that's fine. Okay. Yep, they're over here. Perfect. So let's play. Do I still have a cat? I still have a cat in the background. You can just barely see the cat in the background. Cat. Chat. Build. Slow laptop. Gee, I don't. If you're gonna try to get under here, it's gonna be tough for you. I don't have a lot of lap space right now. Okay, client 1. Let's look at the logs, debug console. Okay, client 1 join. So it didn't do it there. It didn't start doing it. So let's move around. Nope.
So it wasn't quite right away.
Well, yeah, it wasn't. Doesn't seem to be related, yeah, to the player joining. But anyway, so this is the radar. It appears to be functional and working-ish sometimes. Not bad. Okay. These errors are, I know, because we like remove the player and then we're trying to access the thing that's already gone. Well, that's fine. It's actually fine. This is fine. Okay, so that was the radar. Why does the radar not work when the player is first? Oops. Nope, not what I wanted. Okay, let's think about this. So when the player joins, Create ship for UUID. So we add the player here. Then we add them to the player objects. Then we do the camera stuff, and then this function returns the ship, whatever. So at that point, the player exists in the scene tree and in the list of objects. So when we go to update the game radar, well, let's try update game UI first. We get their speed, the current speed, I should say. If we have a missile or not. Oh, my bad. Other way around. So we find the speed label node, and then we set the text to the current velocity of my ship, which should work. I don't understand why that wouldn't work. And then we fix the missile indicator. On the update game radar, we delete all the children. If there are no children, that shouldn't matter. So this is for each node in the children, remove the child and free the queue, but there are none. So this should just exit. Let's see. Then we iterate over the players. And so there should only be one player object. And so if there's only one of us, we would just bounce out. Okay. So now we're going to have to do nasty, like actual debug stuff. Blech. Nobody likes that. Okay, so let's run the client. The cat has decided that it is not interested. There was insufficient lap for sitting, so off it went. Okay, so here's the client, and here is the debug console. And we got no problems. And so if I speed up, okay, I didn't change anything.
I suspect if you were to connect more clients and continue to
let's join
you would
somebody.
Eventually run into the problem again.
Player join.
Earlier in my test here.
No, I'm talking about the weird explosion with where the radar wouldn't work right.
Oh, okay.
And like all those no pointer issues, like I'm suddenly not seeing them. Oh, but I removed the call deferreds, which was the problem.
That's right. Yep, and you're back to straight agile.
Yeah. Okay. So this is actually working. Where's the game? So if I move too far away, nope, the radar is dead. Speedometer is dead, I should say. But we have no errors here. So let's figure out why the radar is dead. So we just hit that. I fired up a breakpoint. If my ship is null, my ship not equal null. True. Okay, my ship is not null. So it should go to update game UI. So step into what happens if I do my ship current velocity 0. Okay, well, let's kill that breakpoint for now and play again. And then move my ship to have some velocity and then break here. My ship current velocity 0. How is that possible? C1 definitely has a velocity. So what is going on? my ship. Okay, so that's a real thing. No, that's fine. When the game is debugged and installed and like the networky stuff isn't going on in real time, like it gets really pissed off. Current velocity 0. Weird. Oh, look at that. That's wrong. So somehow,
UUID of the player?
yeah, that's the UID of a different player. So somehow it got confused with who we are. Like my ship, where my ship got assigned, it got confused. So that's a big problem. Okay, so let's find my ship and go to references. Okay. Create ship for, you know what? I bet I know what's happening. Okay. So this is probably a bug that I introduced. So if we look at the messaging, so let's see, send command, security received. So we get a security event, then we process the security event. So if we go to process security type join, do something fancy because a player joined. So we're not actually doing anything on the security message for a join. But at some point we get a create for the player. So we get create for a ship, create ship for UUID. So this is probably where it gets borked. Check if our UUID is set, would be set after join, but it's possible. Okay, so let me set a breakpoint here.
So you think you're losing track of your original ID
Yep.
at this point?
Yeah. I bet that's what's going on. Fun troubleshooting for the win.
So is this a build that you built of Godot?
No, this is still using the 351 just raw build.
Okay.
I did build a debug version to try to backtrace that issue. So once if I can fix this bug quickly, we'll see what we can do there. This is already, aha, why are we here? Oh, because there's already a player. All right, interesting. So what is my UUID? Let's look. My UUID. So we don't have a UUID. But we're also not in the game.
Yeah, we haven't joined yet from this client.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to actually kill the client here. Oh, I can't do that when I'm in the break. Got to do it here. So if my UID is null and in game false. Oh, true. Why are you upset about this? Because is that not how you do ands in C#? Conditional ands?
That should be a conditional and. I don't need. You need to parenthesize the whole works, but I don't see why you would need to. The first is a Boolean.
I would have needed
in-game.
to wrap everything in parentheses around both of those. That's probably it. But this should work. So this is, so if we don't have a UUID yet and we're not in the game, then that's actually our own ship. So that is probably the reason. So let's try this again. I'm gonna kill this breakpoint because I bet I fixed it. And I probably never noticed that before. It's probably been doing that for a while. At least the speedometer. And that would make sense why it's 0, because it was somebody else's ship, which was not moving. 13 load average. Yeah, baby. That's some good stuff. Okay, so there's that other ship. Let's see, 1, join game, speedometer, hooray, I fixed it. And the radar is working. Look at that.
That's good news.
Yeah, look at that, I fixed the bug. Thanks to our readers, I fixed the bug. Watchers, viewers, readers. Okay, so let me commit that change. Whoa. Oh, I know why. That's that common problem we have where we take things away and they don't exist and then it gets pissed off. Is there somebody on the server? Oh, hey. Okay, delete the player, delete this other player. Okay, cool. So I don't think I have that page anymore. So let's go to Godot engine. We will go to the documentation. We will go to compiling.
Oh, so you're looking for the build?
Well, I just want to show people what we did. So
okay.
Godot isn't built with debug symbols normally, so you can't use like GDB to backtrace stuff that's going on. And so that issue that we saw earlier with the PLM, this is true or whatever, which one is that? 62970. This is the issue that we're having where it suddenly starts to spew out this you know, and it's funny, I didn't put it in the actual text of the, so we see this error where that Godot starts spitting out and somebody was like, blah, 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 you need to do a build and backtrace it. And so that code is Godot core self list H. So compiling for X11 Linux, you can follow all these instructions. And then there is compiling with mono. And so there's some extra specifics. We're using mono because we're using C#, blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately we want to use GDB. So let's go to the game server and add a bunch of players. Okay. And then let's kill the Godot editor. And then I'm going to kill no, I'm going to leave that window. Okay. So cd opt, cd Godot, cd GDB. This is the folder that has the GDB version of Godot. So actually, I already messed that up because I need to go to OpenShift and then SRT Godot client.
What version of scans were you running? Do you remember? Or do you know?
420.
Okay. I was on like 3.1 and mine blows up like right out of the gate at the moment.
Yeah. I'm also on
you're on Fedora 37 or something, right?
35. I need to update
35.
to 37. Anyway, so GDB, opt, Godot, GDB, and it's this one because you build it twice when you're doing the mono for whatever reason. It's fine, who cares? and we are in the Godot client area. So when you run the Godot program from a folder that has a project file, it automatically, the editor opens the project of the folder that you're in. But I have to set up conditional debugging or breakpoints, sorry. So while that's crushing my computer, somebody sent a link to conditional breakpointing. What we want to do is make GDB pause only when we hit this error, which happens to be in Godot core self-list H at line 80. This says break file name : line number. We don't care about condition because if we hit that, we've already found the thing. So I need to break this. Nope. Break that 80. Is that going to work? I don't know what GDB is doing. Okay. It didn't explode. Does that mean it did the right thing?
Should be able to do things break. I can't remember my syntax for GDB anymore. Working
So
Go too long.
There's a bajillion breakpoints, which I'm confused about. Why are there all these breakpoints? That could be part of the reason that. And none of them are the one that I just told it about. Well, but this is actually good info, right? So core self-list, Godot core self-list. So I actually just need core self-list. So how do I clear breakpoints? Remove breakpoints? I don't think there's any watchers. GDB remove all breakpoints. Clear all breakpoints. Use delete with no arguments. Disable with no arguments. Disable all breakpoints followed by enable. And we're okay. So let's do break delete. Nope. Delete. Delete all breakpoints. Yes. Info breakpoints. None. Hooray. Okay. Break core self list H80. Breakpoint 2. How do we go from 0 to 2?
It's probably related to what you'd set in the session.
Yeah, but so all I did was, I wonder if that code is not actually 80. Because I deleted all the breakpoints. I set a breakpoint on core self-list H80.
And it's saying it's
and then I've got all this stuff.
So you need to go take a look at self-list header line 80.
Yep.
And see what's there.
This is the output, not the build.
That looks like the build.
I mean, that's line 80.
Oh, but it's a macro. So the macro is expanded, right? From the debugger's point of view, that's not a single line.
So did I do it?
So you probably did it right. It's just that error fail condition is likely a macro based on the capitalization, and that gets expanded when it's being compiled, right?
Okay.
So that's actually equivalent to a bunch of lines.
So we're just going to try it, and
or you could, break on the line before, which would likely break when you entered the function, although it's templated, so maybe that wouldn't help.
Okay, so.
And that's why there's so many variants, because the function that it's in is a template. And so those are the different ways that it's used.
Got it. Okay, well, hopefully it will do what we want.
It's likely going to do what we want, plus a whole lot more.
But that's bad.
Meaning that it will break a lot.
Well, it was already breaking a lot, so I don't like with 0 breakpoints defined, it would break all the time or pause all the time. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Hopefully it'll get better, but it's not promising.
And I did notice there up top there it said enabled or not, and each one has an individual enable or disable. And if we know the specific template,
so here I'm already
might be able to.
I'm already it's like already doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, because it's in a collection, and essentially that was an add last or something, so it broke right away.
Right, which is not helpful.
Yeah, because like basically that's in the rasterizer, right? Update 30 multi-meshes. And so you almost need to know the specific variant, the specific template instantiation for that line, right? So this is where one of those things where, like, templates and metaprogramming can be wonderful, and so can macros, but they can be a real pain to debug, right? Because really, if this was a concrete implementation and it wasn't a macro, like you'd have a real line that you could break on really easily, which we don't have at the moment.
Right, and all I want GDB to do is explode when there's a literal actual error.
Yeah, and so likely inside the macro, inside the templated function, like there's some sort of check, right? Because it says error fail condition, so it's failing on a condition. So actually, what you might be able to do is go to the macro and find out where the condition fails and break in the
where,
macro.
like, I mean, where would I find the macro?
If you right-click, can you go to definition or something like that?
Let me open a new editor then and do it in VS Code, because that'll probably work better. Although I don't have any of the C stuff installed, so it might not work any better.
Yeah, like somewhere there's a hash defined space or tab error fail condition, and then a bunch of code, like with line extensions on each line, right?
Actually, I do have all the C++ stuff installed from back when we were doing.
Oh, the original game server that I wrote years ago.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, so you need to be able to right click on that macro and go to the definition.
What? No. Why? I don't know why it's doing that. Do I not have the C? I thought I had all this C stuff installed.
Had you updated VS Code?
I don't know. It's installing it anyway, so. This extension is example.
It should only be small.
Okay.
11 megs, that's not too bad.
Well, it appears to be installed. Okay, so we want to need to go to 80. And then we need, oops. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so this is the macro, right? This is the expansion. And so when...
I love it. If unlikely. So I really want to break on error macros H289.
Or in particular, it says condition blah blah is true, and so like you're looking for that. You're looking for 289.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So
I have two windows. I have the.
No, that's cool. So I want to break on error macros H289.
Yep.
All right, but where does that file actually live? So that is in the core. So core error macros H289. Okay. Let's come back here to GDB. This is horrifically painful, but welcome. Oh, look, we've got adult dating chat. Great. Thanks. How do I, let's see. Block user on YouTube. they were blocked. Add to block list in Restream chat. They were blocked from there as well. Okay. So we want to break core. Oh boy, this is where it gets fun. Error macros H289. No line 289. I don't understand how that's possible. 289 error macros dot H core. Roddy, you're my expert here.
Yeah, sorry, I was just noticing that the chat window in our streamer went away. It said to get a new link somewhere. So it's saying that it doesn't exist. No line 289 in file. Core error macros.h, which we just saw.
Right.
Did indeed exist. And so maybe it's thinking it's the header is not included or something. But we know that it is. And so are there any other error macros header files in any other directories that we could be misinterpreting?
There's object files. So we've got error list, error macros, and then a bunch of random third-party stuff.
Yeah, so you would think that that should be it, right? So I wonder if you scroll up, I'm wondering if there's a bunch of conditional compilation stuff in there so that it's not actually line 289, right? I don't see any condition. Oh, yeah, there's some conditional stuff, if defs there somewhere. A little further down. Yeah, and so because, yeah, so there's if def, Microsoft, a bunch of stuff. So yeah, so it's not actually going to end up being line 289.
Okay. How would we find it?
So maybe we can break on a macro. I don't know if that's true or not. Never tried to do it before.
Break on a macro? Well, then I would have to.
Oh, then you'd have to hit every time the macros hit.
Well, no. Then I would have to compile and run it from within VS Code if I want to use a breakpoint here. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you meant.
Yeah, because ideally we'd want to break on error, print error. Maybe you can break it when the function is called, but that's not really going to help you because, as we can see, error, print error is called in a lot of different places.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, in a lot of IDEs, there's a way to look at what the final form of the file would be. So you could probably find the right line. But I don't use VS Code, so I don't know what you would do here to find it. But I can take a look.
I'm also going to look for like GDB show file line numbers or something. GDB can print parts. Ooh. Print lines from a source file, use the list command. But how do I choose the file? You cannot debug macro commands line by line. You cannot set a breakpoint in a macro. You cannot see variables in the macro.
These are the painful things about macros.
You cannot debug macros. You can expand a macro for debugging as advised. So I see this message that you've sent me, but I don't understand what you're telling me to do. Info, okay.
Yeah, so it looks like you might be able to use GDP to get some information on what it knows about the error failed condition macro. So
Well, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to, I don't know that this is going to work like in any meaningful way without just rewriting the code for that thing.
Yeah.
The symbol error fail cond has no definition.
Oh, so it doesn't know anything about the macro.
Yeah. This is one of those things where I think I'm going to just respond back to them like that doesn't actually work because it's a macro.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know. I've always tried to avoid macros where I could. I mean, sometimes they're the right tool for the job, but they come with drawbacks, like choosing most any tool, really.
Yeah. Where did the 62970? Okay, that's probably a good stopping point then. Raoul. I just lost that Stack Exchange, GDB macro. There we go.
Yeah, and like if you had this all set up in a nice IDE, maybe where you're running Godot like through the IDE, actually like stepping through and watching how the nodes in the scene graph are being manipulated and stuff. Maybe it might be more obvious what goes on there with the like if you stepped in and then up on the macro, you might be able to more easily and quickly set the breakpoint you're looking to set. But it can be challenging through the command line.
Yeah.
And so from what it's saying, like it looks like one of the lists is getting updated such that it thinks that the element pointer to the root node is not equal to this. So if it thinks that it should be equal to this, that means whatever is being executed should be in the root node of something, maybe in the scene graph. And so the one thing I did note that we were doing is the deletion of the children. And I don't know exactly, like at a high level there. So in game.cs in line 117, we say delete children of game radar. And so I wonder if one thing that might be instructional, do we have an easy way to disable the radar at the moment? We probably don't.
Yeah, but we got this before the radar.
Okay. Well, in that case, then that shoots down that idea.
Yeah, this problem has existed since July.
Okay.
Which is long before radar.
Yep. So it wouldn't be related to that in that case. And so also in the in one of the call stacks that got dumped out when I reproduced the problem here, it was talking about name IP resolution. But I don't know that we do any name IP resolution, so I didn't find that very helpful.
Not directly.
Right?
Constantly is a word. Oh, it just doesn't like the comma. I use Grammarly.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's like any one of these types of problems where it's not immediately obvious looking at the code exactly what's going on, because the assumptions you make when you're writing the code are the assumptions you're making when you're debugging the code. And like obviously there's some assumptions
Well,
somewhere there
but
that's broken, I
it's
think,
again,
right?
we're stuck at this point where like we have no idea. So first of all, the server doesn't do it ever. Only the
Right.
client does it.
Yep.
And so that's one part that's weird, because the server and the client use very, 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 very similar code, except of course
Yes.
for the way the client is drawing stuff is a little different. And like there's no we can't reliably reproduce it, and we don't
Correct.
even know when it's happening. So it's like, you know, we could set the logging to super verbose where we have like tons and tons of log messages
Yeah, but more
sitting
information
out
I
of the
don't think
client,
would
but
help
I don't know
really.
that it's going to help us figure out when it starts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like what's the triggering event here? Because it
Do I
doesn't
still
really appear to
have?
be one.
Yeah, so like I can go to the game and set the minimum log level to verbose. And, oh, it's disconnected. Oh. And then the other question was like, is there a way to do it without GDB so that it just like spits out more backtrace info when it throws that error?
Right. If it spit out the full stack trace of how it got to that point in time from its main game loop, that might be a lot more informative, right, than just the line itself. Because ultimately, that's what you want to get from GDP is a backtrace, so you can see like the path it took to get to where it is, and then ideally you'd be able to inspect the variables and say at each part of the backtrace and understand where it went wrong.
I mean, is there a way to make that line of code spit out a backtrace instead of just the log
Yeah,
message?
I'm not sure. I saw when you execute Godot in the command line, you can do -D for debug mode, but I don't know what that actually gives you.
So here's it spitting out all these game event log messages, which is fun. Oh, it did it. It did it. Stop. But the only thing that was happening was it's in the middle of receiving game events, and
Right.
it's way after. So it added all the ships. So everything is just sitting there, and we're idle, and boom. So it randomly happened in between receiving two game events.
Right there.
Yeah. So here's received a game event, error begins, receive game event, blah, blah, blah. So game event received is in here. Game event received. So that's in this function. And so this is the line of, it has to be, if anything in our code is making it happen, it's this. It has to be, right?
Yep. Because that's the only thing happening.
And we didn't have an exception. So it's either, it's something in here, or it's in the process game event, but we didn't get any of these either. We didn't get a create. We didn't get a create. We didn't get a destroy.
Because the only thing coming in would have been updates, right?
Right. And I'm not. Oh, you know what? I don't have we're not spitting out a message on got an update, annoyingly. So that should be a verbose message because there's going to be tons. So if it's an update, and then we would do this, and then we would do be verbose. I don't want them all the time. So verbose. Okay, so now we have to go to this function. So it wasn't in here. Well, it could have been in here. So this is where it's like we have to add like an obscene amount of logging.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, essentially, this happens every frame, right?
No, it happens every time the AMQP. Well, it happens every process function on the server, theoretically. Oops. What time is it? Oh, 3:30. Okay, so we're in here. We can't get much more. We can't get much more than that. So create ship for UID, which we already have a debug message. It's doing all those things, and it wasn't doing that when it happened. So then we have update the ship from the event buffer was the only other thing.
And it wasn't doing that.
Well, it would have been.
Oh yeah, there's no logging in there.
Try to make sure that the name of the function, the file, is in the serlogger call. No, that doesn't need to be in there, but I suppose game. But whatever. If we find one, we'll do it. Okay. So we'll try this again. But it was good because just sitting around it happened, so I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, which also narrows the scope, right?
Oh God. More spam. Okay, so it's doing its thing. So we'll see if it ends up doing its thing, which it hasn't done yet. The other fun thing is like, did we add enough logging to?
But it won't happen anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. To like change some kind of timing where it would cause it to not happen anymore.
Absolutely could be the case.
This would be really frustrating.
Oh. So we have. Oh, there we go.
Got it. Stop. Hopefully. Okay.
Right there.
So it looks like this is the first place.
Between got update for player and update.
It's in between got update for player and update ship with your UID. And so server connection got update for player goes into
directly.
Update ship with your UID. Okay. And update ship with your UID. Well, it could be the assignment of this.
Or it could be the like using the my game node. Or looking up the UUID.
Well, the next. I mean, so it's either this line.
Yep.
Or the next line.
Which isn't even.
Which is the log message.
Yeah, that's right.
So like it looks like it's this line of code.
Yep. And so in doing mygame.update, mygame is of type node.
Everything is of type node.
Right.
I mean, in this specific case, my game is a game.
Right, and game is a node.
Everything is a node. Let's see.
So if you scroll down, is it always the case that it appears between those two lines?
Hold on.
Because if it isn't always the case that it appears between those two lines, the other question is the logging synchronous or asynchronous? Right.
It should be synchronous because it's just getting spit out immediately. So do you see how he inserted this code reference? How do I do that in a comment? Reference an issue, pull request or discussion. Let's look here. Basic formatting, supported quoting code. Creating and highlighting code blocks. Mentioning people, referencing issues, referencing external sources. Is there a way to like view the source of a comment? I don't see how to do that cool source code sourcey thing that he did.
I just realized I was muted. I think it was 3 backticks before the source and 3 backticks after.
That just gives you a block like this.
Okay. It gives you a quote, but not a formatted.
This is actually like referencing a file and the line in a commit.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Can you do some searching while I try
Yes, indeed.
and insert a link and see if that's what does it? So that was...
So it says references to a commit SHA hash are automatically converted into shortened links to the commit on GitHub. So, but I think that's only a part of what we saw there, right? Because it references the file and then the commit. So I don't think that's the full story.
So your question was like, does it spit out the error every time?
In between those two lines of
No,
logging.
because it actually, you know what? It's not that. Because look, here we got update for player, condition, whatever.
It's true, yep.
Then blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
All of this happens in the same second, right? 39.
Yep.
Update from event
Right.
buffer. Barf, barf, barf.
So what's the commonality there?
Well, but at this point, you don't know what the problem is because we don't actually know that anything that we did caused this. We just know it happened between these two things happening. Godot was off doing who knows what.
Yeah, that's right.
So really, I don't think anything I'm about to write is.
Yeah, that might not be helpful.
Yeah. All right. Never mind. All right. I think it's time to call it.
All right. Good call.
But yeah, thanks, Roddy. That was good. So radar, hooray. We didn't add the health bar because we got sidetracked on debugging, but that's okay. I don't know. But for those of you that celebrate Thanksgiving, whether you're in America or not, happy Thanksgiving coming up here tomorrow.
Yes, indeed.
And other than that,
Please
we
enjoy.
will see you next time.
All right. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's see here. Stop screen share. Now we get both of our pretty faces. And then the ending thing. Bye-bye.